James Carter, a black law professor, was humiliated and arrested on false charges, targeted for nothing but the color of his skin. The officers had no idea they'd crossed someone who could destroy their case with a single legal move. What he did next shocked everyone. But let's start at the beginning. On a warm evening, James Carter, a distinguished 50-year-old black man, strolled home, a bag of groceries in hand. The quiet hum of the neighborhood surrounded him, children laughing, the faint sound of a distant ice cream truck, and the golden hue of the setting sun casting long shadows over the pavement. These walks were a ritual for James, a former attorney turned university law professor, offering a moment of reflection after hours spent lecturing and mentoring students. As James approached a crosswalk, the tranquility of the evening was disrupted by the rumble of a patrol car pulling up beside him. Inside were Officers Daniels and Cooper, both white. Their stern gazes locked onto James with intensity. Daniels, younger and brimming with authority, rolled down his window sharply. "Hey, you! Stop right there!" he barked, his voice cutting through the peaceful evening. James froze, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Is there a problem, officers?" he asked, his tone calm but cautious. He set the grocery bag down gently, his eyes meeting theirs without fear, but full of curiosity. "You match the description of someone loitering near private property," Daniels said curtly, stepping out of the vehicle. His hand hovered near his holster, sending an unspoken warning. "Loitering," James repeated, incredulous. "I was walking home." His voice remained steady, though a knot of unease tightened in his chest. "Let me see some ID," Daniels demanded, his tone hardening. James hesitated briefly before reaching for his wallet. "I don't see how," he began, only to be cut off by Cooper's sharp command. "Hands where I can see them," Cooper ordered, stepping closer, his voice laced with tension. James raised his hands slowly. "I'm not resisting," he assured them, maintaining his composure. "I'm just trying to understand." "You can explain at the station," Daniels interrupted, grabbing James's arm and slapping on handcuffs without warning. The metal bit into his wrists as a small crowd began to gather, murmuring in disbelief. Some bystanders pulled out their phones, recording the scene. "Is this necessary?" James asked, his voice steady, his dignity unshaken. "Disturbing the peace," Daniels muttered, pushing him into the back of the patrol car. Outside, murmurs of disapproval grew louder, but the officers paid them no mind, leaving James to face a night that would change everything. At the station, James Carter sat silently in a cold, dimly lit holding cell. The air was heavy with the distant hum of fluorescent lights and the muffled sounds of officers moving about their daily routines. Despite the calm exterior he projected, James's mind raced. How had a routine walk home spiraled into this humiliating ordeal? He hadn't committed any crime, yet here he was, stripped of his dignity and treated like a common criminal. In the adjacent room, Officers Daniels and Cooper sat at their desks, confidently typing their reports. Daniels, smirking slightly, recounted the events with embellishments that painted James as uncooperative. Cooper, less sure but unwilling to challenge his partner, followed suit. They believed their version of events would go uncontested, as it so often did. The following morning, James stood before the court for his arraignment. The room buzzed with activity, but the atmosphere shifted as Judge Harris, an older black woman with a commanding presence, took her seat. Her sharp eyes scanned the charges in front of her. "Disturbing the peace? Loitering?" she read aloud, her tone dripping with skepticism. She looked up, her gaze landing on James. "Mr. Carter, do you have legal representation?" James allowed a small, confident smile to cross his face. "Your Honor, I'm an attorney. I'll represent myself." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Journalists and onlookers whispered to one another, trying to piece together this unexpected revelation. Daniels and Cooper, seated nearby, stiffened visibly. Unease flickered across their faces as they exchanged nervous glances. Judge Harris raised her eyebrows, her expression curious but composed. "Is this true, Mr. Carter?" "Yes, Your Honor," James replied smoothly. "In addition, I'm a professor of constitutional law." A palpable tension swept through the room. The judge adjusted her glasses, now viewing James with a mix of intrigue and respect. Across the aisle, Daniels shifted uncomfortably, his earlier confidence beginning to waver. For the first time, the officers realized the gravity of their mistake. What they had dismissed as a routine arrest now threatened to expose their actions to the full scrutiny of the law, and a man who knew it better than anyone. In the days leading up to the trial, James Carter's arrest became a lightning rod for public outrage. Videos captured by bystanders flooded social media, showing the officers aggressively handcuffing a calm and compliant James as he simply carried groceries home. The footage, accompanied by hashtags like Justice for James and hashtag End Racial Profiling, gained traction. Activists, students, and community leaders rallied in support of James, holding vigils and organizing protests outside the courthouse. The courtroom was packed on the day of the trial, buzzing with anticipation. James, dressed in a sharp suit, stood confidently at the defense table. His legal acumen and calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the visibly uneasy officers Daniels and Cooper, seated nearby. When the proceedings began, James wasted no time dismantling their claims. Using timestamps, video evidence, and eyewitness testimonies, he painted a clear picture of the officer's misconduct. "Officer Daniels," James said during cross-examination, his tone measured but firm, "can you explain why you believed I was loitering when multiple witnesses saw me carrying groceries home?" Daniels hesitated, visibly flustered. It was suspicious activity," he stammered. James raised an eyebrow. "Suspicious activity? Carrying groceries? And yet, you escalated the situation without justification, violating my Fourth Amendment rights against unlawful search and seizure." Cooper attempted to intervene, but James cut him off with precision. "Do you deny that I repeatedly tried to explain myself, and you ignored me?" The courtroom fell silent, all eyes on the officers as they squirmed under James's relentless questioning. By the time he concluded, their credibility lay in tatters. The prosecutor, recognizing the futility of the case, quietly dismissed the charges. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of supporters erupted into applause as James emerged. Cameras flashed as he stepped up to a podium. "This case was never just about me," he began, his voice steady but impassioned. "It's about accountability and justice for everyone who faces this kind of treatment, but doesn't have the platform I do. That's why I'm filing a civil suit, not just for myself, but for those who remain unheard." The moment marked not just a personal victory for James, but a call to action for systemic change. Weeks later, James stood at a press conference after reaching a settlement with the city. He announced that the funds would go toward a new legal clinic to help marginalized communities fight unjust policing. Daniels and Cooper were suspended pending an internal investigation, and their actions became a case study in police misconduct training programs nationwide. At the university, James returned to his lectures, where he encouraged his students to use the law as a tool for justice. "Change doesn't come easy," he told them, "but it starts with knowing your rights and standing firm." As he walked home that evening, the same streets felt different. Neighbors greeted him warmly, offering support. James smiled, knowing that his fight had ignited a spark of change that would ripple far beyond his neighborhood.